Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists episode 672. My name is Kyle.
And my name is James.
And we're here to talk movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. And James, we're finally sitting down to record.
We are finally sitting down to record.
It's been a Sunday for all of us.
You know, it's this is a first, I believe.
Okay.
I don't know if this is a first. I was going to say this is the first time you and I have recorded in the same time zone, but that's not true because you came to Florida. But this is the first time I've recorded in your time zone.
That is true. A Cinereelist first.
So it's early for me. It's like 8:15. We're still 15 minutes before we would be on my schedule. So
yeah, and I'm like, man, we were 45 minutes behind schedule. Not all is my fault at all.
Yeah. No, I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I drove 11 hours to get to this hotel room, Kyle.
In one day?
Just to record with you. Yep.
Yeah. Just to be the closest central time zone you could find was Baton Rouge, correct?
No, it's because I have like another 3 hours and 45 minutes left on my journey, and I was like, I'm not doing all that in one day.
No, even you did 11 hours in one day?
Yeah, 11 hours.
That's brutal.
That doesn't really bother me.
Well,
I could have gone the whole thing, to be honest, but I mean, my client's paying for the hotel room, so might as well not kill myself over it.
You should have them pay for a second one closer so you can make it a multi-day trip.
I can stay wherever I want. I just wanted to do the bulk of it today.
Yeah.
I just have I can get up late tomorrow. I don't have to be where I need to be till 4. So I have the whole morning. Yeah. Yep. But
you do not have a big day of driving ahead of you, thankfully.
No. So my brain says it's 9:15 right now, but my clock says it's 8:15. So,
and you can't forget we also had daylight savings, so you're probably still adjusting to that too.
Yeah, that happened, and I didn't even realize it happened. Like today, right?
Yeah,
daylight savings was a week ago.
A week ago, yeah.
Today, I got in my car and noticed there was a discrepancy between my car clock and my phone clock. And I was like, that's weird. And I changed the time on the car clock. And then when I was eating lunch today, I was like, oh, I think they're different because maybe daylight savings passed. So I looked it up and sure enough, last weekend.
Do you have any other clocks in your house besides your phone, like on the oven or the microwave, or are those just all blinking 12?
They're all Internet of Things. They all just update via the internet. Like all my clocks except for my car clock update on their own.
You have the most hackable house then.
Yeah, probably. I mean, good luck
to
anybody that
terrible
wants
for
that.
Cybersecurity to your home. So.
But I don't have anything anybody would want cybersecurity wise.
I mean, you have a social security number. You have bank accounts.
Yeah, but if I really want your social security number, I can get it.
I'm saying they're just going to backdoor through your oven, and then you're screwed. So
yeah, that's where I store my social security number. So I really hope they don't hack my oven.
They hack the oven to get on the network. Once on their network,
I know, but where are they going to go to get my social security number?
Well, your computer.
My social security number is not on my computer.
Can't they? I don't know enough about hacking to go beyond this point.
I make sure that it's not on my computer. Like there's nothing on my computer that has my social security number on it.
Very wise of you then.
I also never log in bank accounts, never permanent. Every time I go to my bank account, I have to re-log in. I don't tell it to store passwords for anything.
You don't store passwords, really?
I don't store passwords for anything vital. Yeah. I have one Gmail account that is linked to all my client accounts. It makes me log in every morning.
Wow.
It signs off overnight, and then I have to sign in. And then I have one of those random 6-digit generators.
Yeah.
That's how I log in. So unless you have my cell phone, you're never getting in.
Wow. Okay. I have a note on my phone. It's a locked note. All my passwords are in that note. So
Well, I mean, as long as it's a locked note, it should be okay.
It's a locked note, yes.
Yeah. But well, I guess it depends on where you take your laptop. If you never take your laptop anywhere, then I wouldn't be worried about like leaving it logged in. Like if your laptop is at home 99.9% of the time, then yeah, go ahead, log it in. Who cares?
Yeah, I never take my laptop anywhere with me.
Right. But mine goes everywhere, so I'm very paranoid about leaving it somewhere and then having somebody open it and like having full access to not only my personal stuff, but like all my clients'
all your
logins
clients,
and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well,
So,
and as we learned a couple weeks ago, my laptop is now a tethered. The battery doesn't work anymore, so it has to be plugged in. So it's a pretty.
they can hack that one all they
house.
want. Yeah.
Yeah. Take it if you want. Good luck.
Nice. Perfect. Well, welcome to episode 672, listeners and Kyle. I'm excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back. I had a drop last minute last week.
Yeah.
And then
no Zach this week.
No, Zach had a drop this week.
Yep. I'd bring Zach back, but I don't have my sounds here with me. So.
Oh yeah. Well, because you're here in the Central Time Zone, we just don't have all the perks that you have there on the East Coast.
Right. Exactly.
Or Eastern, I should say. Florida's not the East Coast. I mean, I know
it's the East Coast,
but it's not the East Coast. Like when people say, like, I'm going to the East Coast, they're referring to like Maryland north.
I don't know about that.
I feel like being one who is from the East Coast, right, born outside of Boston.
Sure. If you're in Boston and you're like, I'm going to the East Coast, of course, people you're talking about right next to you.
No,
just like in Florida, when people say I'm going to the East Coast, I assume they're talking about right next to us.
Yeah, but okay.
But if they say Northeast, then I know they're going up to like New York or Boston or whatever.
But if you were in Wisconsin and someone said to you, I'm going to the East Coast, where are they going?
Like New York-ish.
Yeah, New England, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Probably not New England. If somebody says, I'm going to the East Coast, and what they really mean is they're going to New England, they're not going to say East Coast. They're going to say New England.
Okay.
Right? Because nobody goes to New England unless they're going to say that they're going to New England.
You only go to New England if you're telling people you're going to New England.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's more slang for like Boston, New York. That's pretty much it.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. I don't think you can count Philadelphia as East Coast.
I mean, even Washington, D.C., you wouldn't be like, I'm going to the East Coast when you really mean you're going to Washington, D.C.
You say I'm going to D.C.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. This is the Semantics Podcast. Welcome.
New topic every week.
Yeah. I've been listening on the way up here. I listened to like 8 hours of a podcast where they're going through 9 Inch Nails song by song.
Oh, what's the podcast called?
In order. It's called Nailed.
Oh, in order. So like
in order.
Like Pretty Hate. Are they starting with Pretty Hate Machine, or is there one before that?
Oh no. They started with the Down In It single off Pretty Hate Machine because that was the first 9 Inch Nails record to be released. And the Down In It single has like Down In It and like 4 remixes of Down In It. And they went through every remix.
They're doing every
They're doing every song in order of release.
Is each episode its own song?
No.
Okay.
They do it by album or single or what EP, whatever it happens to be on. Although they just got to Downward Spiral, they split that one up into 4 2-hour episodes.
So so they're doing like half hour 45 minutes in each song.
An hour and a half to 2 hours every 3 to 4 songs.
Jeez.
And they had like an hour and a half prologue to that album. But they go through the entire history of every song, play the song, then play the stem versions of the songs.
Like the tracks broken
and
out?
Talk about who played what on the songs and like where the sounds were sampled from, what keyboards they used. They go in like great depth. It's kind of impressive, to be honest. but really only for hardcore fans. I can't imagine anybody else listening to it, to be honest. I'm kind of looking forward to when they get out of Downward Spiral era, because my familiarity with it slopes downward from then on. You know what I mean? Like I love The Fragile and With Teeth, Year Zero, and by the time Year Zero came around, I've listened to the albums after it like a couple times each, but like did not get obsessed with them type of thing. So I can't wait till they get to those, because that'll be like all new information for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway,
I don't think I got much farther. What was the free album they put out?
The Slip.
I think The Slip is kind of the last thing I really listened to. Was that after Year Zero?
Oh yeah. The Slip was like mid 2010s, and Year Zero was 07-ish.
Okay, sure.
Maybe 06, because the George W. Bush was still in office
for The Slip, or I mean for Year Zero.
Year Zero.
Okay,
yeah, because it was an anti-George Bush album, basically. We're not here to talk about Nine Inch Nails, though, Kyle. We're here to talk movies or George Bush.
What a simple time that was.
For sure. I would take George Bush back any day.
My goodness. I don't even want to get into that.
I don't want George Bush back, but if that's the choice, I'm taking it.
Do you have the Bring Bush Back on your soundboard there?
No, but I should make one.
Okay, please do.
For whenever Trump comes up on this podcast. Yeah, we're going to talk movies. We're going to do a staple of this podcast. We're going to run down our top 10 last 10 lists, which is a list that we invented. But before we jump into all that, we need to remind you there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out there. youtube.com/Cinereelists, REEL with an S on the end. You could also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists, get extra after show audio, amongst other things. You could also leave us an Apple Podcast review. 5 stars only. We'd appreciate that. That one's free, easy to do. If you haven't done it yet, do it now. You could also send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. Links are in the description of this episode to accomplish any of those types of things. So get on it. Kyle, are you ready to jump into our top 10 last 10?
I am so ready.
Top 10, top 10, and top 10, last 10, and last 10, and last 10, last 10, and top 10, top 10, and top 10, and top 10, last 10, last 10, and last 10, and last 10, and top 10.
Let's do it. Before we jump into it, though, maybe for those that don't remember or are new listeners, what is a top 10 last 10?
James, that's a great question. A top 10 last 10 is a list where we take the last 10 movies we watched. Generally speaking, these are first-time watches, and we rank them against each other, where we have number 10 being the least favorite of those 10 movies we watch, and number 1 being our favorite of our most recent 10 watched movies.
That's exactly what it is.
Anything else you want to add to that?
No, that was perfect. No? Perfect and succinct. Exactly how I needed it to be. Why don't I go first?
Sure.
That way you can end. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Number 10. My least favorite movie out of the last 10 that I saw is easily Mufasa: The Lion King.
Really, the most recent Lion King movie.
Yes, from just last year. It came out just towards the end of 2024. I mean, this isn't like, it's a 2.5 on Letterboxd, which for me is like middle of the road. Basically, like, it's not a bad movie, but it's also like, it's just about as average as you can get, basically. And that's very much how I felt about Mufasa: The Lion King. The bulk of the story is told kind of in, I guess you'd say, flashback. I don't know if you'd consider it a flashback.
It's being, I haven't seen it. My son saw it. Is there framing like Simba is telling his kids the story of his dad, their grandfather?
Yes, exactly. So he's kind of the storyteller, and then they're jumping back and forth between like current day or whatever you'd call it.
Like present timeline Lion King.
Right. Exactly. Present timeline. Back to like when his dad became king. You know what I mean? How he earned the right to be king type of thing. And I mean, it's just one, it's unnecessary to tell this story. Like it doesn't. This is the problem with prequels and why they're very rarely good, in my opinion, is because they're telling you a story about something in which you know how it ends. You've already known that Mufasa, what he goes on to do.
Right.
Not only like where he lands from a political standpoint, you know, he becomes king, but also like he survives, maybe not survives, but you've already seen this whole other story conclude as far as Mufasa is concerned. And so you're seeing like how he became king, but that doesn't really inform or improve on the story of the Lion King at all. And like the story that they told about Mufasa itself wasn't all that interesting. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. But like I, as a viewer at home who saw Lion King when I was younger, I don't think I was a kid when it came out. I don't have the sentimental attachment that I know a lot of people of like your generation, which you're only like 6 years younger than me. Or
I'm
something
6
like
years
that.
younger. Yes.
Right. But that 6 years was all the difference when it came to the Lion King between like me caring a lot about Lion King or me just thinking it was a good Disney animated movie. And I just have never once thought, gee, I wonder why Mufasa was Lion King.
Why did he deserve to be king?
Right. What did he do to earn it? I've never once thought that. Now, that's the challenge of the movie, right? Is to provide a scenario or an adventure or a plot line or just something that would, even if I'm starting from a point where I don't really care, make me care. You know what I mean? Like that's your goal. That's really your one goal is make me care. And they couldn't get it done. I did not care at all.
Isn't he the king because his father was the king? Like it's a monarchy, isn't it? But
no.
But Simba becomes king.
It becomes a monarchy. That's for sure.
Oh wait, is Mufasa a usurper?
No,
is he a false king?
He's kind of like he creates his own group of people to be king over. People,
he
whatever.
Creates his own domain.
Lions, his own pride or whatever they call
it.
Probably the biggest. I want to say it's a shame, but it's not a shame because clearly Barry Jenkins wanted to make this movie.
Yeah.
It's just like Barry Jenkins made Moonlight and then he made that show on Amazon that nobody watched. And now he's made this Lion King movie. You know what I mean? And it's like, from what I understand, the Underground Railroad show on Amazon is pretty good, but hard to watch.
Okay.
Which is why probably nobody watched it. And I mean, Moonlight was 2015, bro. It's 10 years later. And all you have is one box office bomb, big budget box office bomb with Mufasa : The Lion King, as far as theatrical releases. So I want more from Barry Jenkins, and I don't need him to spend a decade making it. You know what I mean? Like, go get a couple $1 million and make another indie film that's awesome. That's what I'm looking for from Barry Jenkins. Yeah. I saw a review of the Oscars from some guy that I watch on YouTube, and he was talking about how he was excited about Anora winning because it meant that Sean Baker is the type of director that won't just take a paycheck from Disney for his next movie. And I thought, is he that kind of guy? Because it seems like everybody else, when given the opportunity, is taking that paycheck from Disney.
Yeah.
I think Sean Baker, if they were to hand him the right amount of money, he's making whatever they ask him to make.
The next Star Wars is Sean Baker, made by Sean Baker, focusing on the seedy parts of Mos Eisley Cantina.
I mean, if they handed him money and he thought he could tell the story, I bet he would do it. Who wouldn't, right? If they're going
Right.
to hand you like an insane amount of money and you're confident that you can tell the story. I mean, I wouldn't blame any of these people, but I'm just kind of bummed that like it's been 10 years and this is what we get from Barry
Right.
Jenkins as his follow-up to Moonlight, which was great.
Well, yeah, I mean, a worthy Best Picture winner.
Right. And this is just like a riff on an established property that doesn't need to exist. Sad.
Yeah.
So anyway, my number 10.
All right. Well, like I said, I skipped that one. Thankfully, my mother took my son to see Mufasa, so I could skip that one.
Nice. She took the bullet for you. That's
She
for
took the
sure.
bullet for me. Yeah, even she was like, "Yeah, that was fine." All right. My number 10. It's also a 2.5. I would say my overall top 10 last 10 is a pretty compact list. There's no
Okay.
huge highs or huge lows. But that's okay. Not everything has to be like the greatest or the worst.
Mhm.
My number 10 is actually a movie that I watched on the airplane as I was leaving Florida after coming to visit you and Zach at Disney. And this
Okay.
is the latest M. Night Shyamalan movie, Trap.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This movie stars Josh Hartnett as a father who's taking his teen daughter to a pop concert. And while he's at this concert, both he and the audience start to realize that there's more to this concert than it appears. Almost as if this concert's been put on for the audience of one person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to. I guess I could give away more of it. The trailer gave away a lot of it. I think that's one thing that affected my enjoyment of this movie. Not that every movie has to have a good twist to be enjoyable, but I kind of went in knowing, I know why everything is how it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if I know why it is, if that makes any sense, then the
Mhm.
movie needs to make it interesting for the purpose of the whole setup.
Sure.
And the movie was just not interesting whatsoever. M. Night Shyamalan, I'm mixed. I like him as a director overall. Like, I would say he's definitely got some ones I really like, some ones I really don't like. As a dialogue writer, though, I don't think he's the greatest. And this movie is egregious of so many people just espousing exhibition and like secrets to our main character
Mhm.
the whole time. Like, oh yeah, that's the back door that takes you to this room. Only people with this badge are allowed to get in there. He's like, oh, right, great, thanks for the information. And it's just like this is so clunky that everyone just knows the exact amount of information that our main character needs to pull off whatever he's trying to pull off.
Mhm.
At the same time, a good chunk of this movie is about this pop singer who is played by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter.
Mhm.
And this movie feels like an audition tape for her, or like an attempt to launch her music career. Because even when the movie in the last quarter leaves the concert, they find a reason to bring her with them out of the concert.
Mhm.
And I'm like, is this like, I don't like to throw around the term Nepo baby, because some people like Patrick Schwarzenegger, for example, he's on the latest White Lotus. Yes, he has a Schwarzenegger name. He's had opportunities. He's also started from like nothing acting roles and has worked his way up. Right. But this really feels like M. Night Shyamalan just being like, hey, here you go, daughter. Here's a movie role for you. Like, this feels like the extreme side of Nepo baby, where Schwarzenegger or some other people feel, or like Margaret Qualley, right? Her mother is Andy McDowell, correct?
Sure. Yeah.
So technically she's a Nepo baby, but you don't feel like because of Andy McDowell, Margaret Qualley has the career she has.
Right.
I'm sure it's opened doors for her, but it's not like Andy was like, hey, you be in this movie, you be in this movie.
I mean, the one I would point to is Sofia Coppola, right?
Well, true, yes.
Her getting handed the role in Godfather 3, Nepo baby shit.
Completely, yes.
You know what I mean? But her gaining a director career by slowly moving from like no budget indies to like not necessarily big movies, but bigger movies over time.
Right.
That's somebody who, yes, still has a name, probably opens some doors,
Of course.
but
Yep.
wasn't handed like the biggest opportunity on a silver platter
Right. Yes.
as far as directing comes or goes. But
Sound like the new the new Star Wars movie is gonna be made by Sofia Coppola, first time director.
First time director, exactly. I mean, if they did it for her now, I would understand why, because she can point to a filmography and be like, "This is what you're gonna get." You know what I mean? Like,
she has a style and a history. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was a perfect movie to watch on the plane on my phone, Care Southwest.
Absolutely.
But beyond that, not much going on.
Yeah, it's like it's a fun, trashy thriller that like you really shouldn't think about too hard. Otherwise, it will fall apart very quickly.
Very quickly, yes.
For sure. I think that's the difference between like The Village M. Night Shyamalan and Trap M. Night Shyamalan is like The Village is trying to be like Oscar bait with a twist, and Trap knows what it is from beginning to end. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, it knows it's a B movie.
Right, exactly. And so I think that's kind of his sweet spot right now, is to make B movies that can wink at you. But anyway, I enjoyed Trap, but also gave it like a 3 on Letterboxd, which is not great.
I do enjoy seeing the resurgence of Josh Hartnett's career.
Yeah, it was fun just seeing him again.
Seeing him again, and just like in the last 5 years, he's a guy who had just figured he'd be gone. Like, all right, right. He had his moments, Black Hawk Down, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was kind of gone for a long time, and now all of a sudden he's back and doing movies, and people work with him. Like, all right, cool. Josh Hartnett's back.
What happened? Did he like get married and have a kid or something? Is that what happened?
I think he just kind of aged out of being like a young heartthrob.
Oh, so he had to wait till he was like father role material.
Exactly. Yeah. Like he hit 30. You're like, well, you're not can't quite be a father, but you also can't be like the young hot guy. So call us when you're 45.
Sure. That makes sense. All right, my number 9, another movie with a 2.5 on Letterboxd from 2003, Duplex. Have you ever heard of this movie?
Never heard of Duplex. No.
I hadn't either. And I was shocked because this is a movie starring Ben Stiller and Drew Barrymore.
Oh, okay.
Again, 2003. So we're talking 22 years ago, which is kind of insane that this kind of movie is 22 years old now. Directed by Danny DeVito, of all people. And this is the story of a young couple played by Drew Barrymore and Ben Stiller, and they buy a Brooklyn brownstone apartment, but they not only bought their apartment, they had to buy the whole building. There's like a top unit and a bottom unit, and the top unit is rent controlled for $83 a month, and there's an old lady that lives there, and they're never going to be able to kick her out.
Mm-hmm.
She basically just has to die, and then they will be able to take over the top unit, and their plan is like to have kids and like just take over the whole thing, like combine the top and the bottom. So they get the idea that like when they're about to buy it, the old lady that lives upstairs is sick. And so they're like, she's probably going to pass away any day now. You know what I mean? Like, we'll just buy it and it's no big deal. So they buy it. And then like the day that they buy it, they bump into the old lady from upstairs again. And she's like perfectly healthy. And she's like, oh, it was just the flu.
Oh, no.
It turns out she's incredibly healthy and she's not going anywhere for a long time. And Ben Stiller plays an author who just wants to write all day, right? He like writes at home. And the old lady just kind of constantly bugs him with like landlord chores type of stuff, and like chores that you wouldn't ask your typical landlord to do, like to get your laundry and like, you know, a bunch of other dumb stuff. So she basically, the old lady that lives upstairs drives Ben Stiller nuts, and he like can't write his book. Meanwhile, Drew Barrymore is like, I forget where she works, but she's out working corporate world, whatever. And for some reason she gets laid off, and then the old lady starts driving her nuts. And it's basically just like this black comedy of errors type of thing, where these like fairly wealthy yuppie types are trying to get rid of this old lady because they want the whole brownstone for themselves. And meanwhile, every time they do something mean to her, or how should I say this? they're like being nice to her, but she's driving them crazy. And so at some point they lose all empathy and they start thinking, how do we get rid of her?
Like, are they trying to kill her?
Well, they can't evict her.
Okay, fair. All right.
So it's one of those things where, like, at the beginning of the movie, they aren't trying to kill her. By the end of the movie, they're trying to kill her because there's like nothing they can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's like driving them out of the house, basically, to the point where they can't even live there anymore. Anyway, there's some other elements that I have left out for people that would want to see this. I don't know. I was just looking for a laugh in a Ben Stiller, Drew Barrymore movie that I had never seen before or heard of. And now I know why. It's because there's really nothing all that unique or even really funny about this movie. Like, there were moments where I was mildly amused, but they were so far and few between. And it was such a like cliched version of this type of story. You know what I mean? Like there's been variations on this theme. Like Throw Mama from the Train is not the exact same thing, but it's just about old people driving younger people crazy. You know what I mean? To the point where you want to kill them. Yeah, there's just there's a better version of this many times over. This one's pretty forgettable, and I plan on forgetting it very soon. My number 9.
All right. My number 9 is a movie that I watched for my hangover resolutions, right? We made resolutions for our hangover episode for the year. And one of my resolutions was to watch the final 12 movies on the IMDb Top 250. And I was like, I'll do one a month. And I finally got around to seeing the first one in March. And I don't know if I want to complete this resolution anymore, to be completely honest, after watching this movie.
What movie was it?
So this is a Bollywood film called Three Idiots. It came out in 2009. This stars Amir Khan, who is like the biggest male star in Bollywood. Like if you were to put in, you've heard the name, currently, or okay. I say in the last 20 years, you know, he like all the huge movies Amir Khan has been in. And I'm looking at the movies I need to watch for the IMDb Top 250 because a lot of them are Indian films and like half of them are Amir Khan films. And I've seen other Amir Khan films before. I've seen other Bollywood films before that I've enjoyed, but this one I did not care for very much. This is the story of 3 students at an engineering college in India, and they are kind of it feels like almost like not an 80s comedy, but they're sort of like the mean dean who's like, oh, I'm going to fail you guys because, you know, you don't conform to how we learn here. And then these 3 students, they're not quite pulling pranks per se, but they're more trying to be like, there's other ways to learn than by being robots. And that's sort of the message of the movie, but it's a 3-hour-long message of like, there's a better way to do things. And I've seen not this movie before. I've seen that message before. Like Dead Poets Society, I think is a much better version of this same thing of like, let's just let students be students. Now, my understanding is like, this is the first big movie in India that kind of took on their education system. So I could see why to like people of that culture, this could be a really seminal film because it was the first one to be like, yeah, maybe this culture that we have of college and this culture of achievement is not healthy for students. But I've seen that story before, and I didn't think this movie did a very interesting job of presenting it. I mean, it's a Bollywood film. There are songs, there are dance numbers. Even those aren't very memorable or catchy. They just kind of happen. They're there. They feel perfunctory. And I was just kind of waiting for this movie to finish.
Was it long?
It's almost 3 hours long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I watched over 2 sessions.
Okay.
But there was probably multiple weeks between the first and the second viewing.
Nice.
And I don't know. I realized like I only have so much time on my hands now. As I get older, my family gets more busy. I have less time to watch movies. Do I want to force myself to watch 12 3-hour-long Bollywood movies so I say I completed some silly list, or I just want to watch movies that I want to watch?
Wait, so almost all the movies left on your list are Bollywood?
I would say 8 of them are Bollywood. Okay.
That's
and they're all like 2.5, 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And then there's like Green Book and The Elephant Man and a couple other ones on there.
I mean, I would watch the ones you want to watch, and the ones you don't want to watch, don't watch. And I mean, it's cool to be like, I've seen all 250, but like, whatever. Who cares?
Right. Well, exactly. Like, who cares? And the other thing is, I saw at the beginning of the year, I said, oh, I have 12 left to go. And then I watched this one and I checked the list and I have 12 more to go because number 250, which I had seen dropped off, another Indian film popped on at 250. So like right now, I made no progress whatsoever.
Sure.
So yeah, I may just be calling the audible now. I'm abandoning this resolution.
I mean, finish a different list, one that doesn't constantly fluctuate and have 3-hour Bollywood films on it. You know what I mean? Are there any other lists you're close to that you can pivot on?
You know, I think there is like the Empire 500. All I have to watch is like the Best of Youth, which is like a 6-hour long Spanish film.
Oh,
so there are some lists I'm close to. I say IMDb top 250 is the closest one that I have.
Okay.
Because I've done the AFI 100.
And that doesn't change. I mean, it changes, but like once a decade type of thing.
They last updated that in 2009. So it's been over a decade since they've updated that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was working on the Reddit top 250 for a while, but they stopped updating that one a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I may just be beyond my list completion phase of my movie watching life, and that's okay with me.
Sure. All right. You know me, I don't care about completing lists.
I mean, I used to, but
for the most part, I don't care.
maybe I'm aging into where you are now. I'm like, who cares about that list anymore?
But I never cared. That's the difference.
Oh, that's okay. That's a difference. Yeah.
I mean, I like the idea of seeing like entire filmographies of directors.
Right.
But collections by publications, I've just never, I don't know.
Well, and
It's
I
never
would
been
say
a thing for me.
doing lists was really exciting at first because I was seeing like Nosferatu and like these, you know, these famous movies I've heard of as never watched before.
Sure.
Like, oh, I can watch this, complete a list. Great. And I've mentioned this before. I'm now at the point where most of the movies I need to see from a list are foreign and 3+ hours long. And because I've just gotten all like the well-known ones and the quote unquote easy ones out of the way.
Sure.
So now it feels a little bit more homeworky, and I get surprised sometimes, but
yeah, makes sense. All right, my number 8, I think we're on, is Seeking Mavis Beacon, which is a documentary from last year.
Okay.
Do you remember Mavis Beacon, the software?
No.
It taught you how to type.
No, I don't think so.
It's like back in the day, you got it on CD-ROM and you stuck it in your computer, your desktop computer at home.
Okay.
And it was kind of like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, but for typing.
Sure.
Essentially. And the person on the cover of the software was a black woman, and it was Mavis Beacon's Mavis Beacon teaches typing.
Sure.
And so it was like the Mavis or Miss Beacon was like your instructor, and she would give you all these like typing mini games to play or whatever. So these two African American students decided that they were going to make a documentary about this typing software that they hold dear, basically, because it's like one of the few times that they could remember in their lives where like a black woman was like the lead of a piece of software.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Or like the instructor. I mean, like in Carmen Sandiego, who was it? The chief was a black woman type of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, but it was still Carmen Sandiego. You know what I mean? Like it was still a white woman that the game is named after.
That you're seeking out, yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's not like there was no representation in this area, but this is like the only piece of software that, according to the documentary, the only piece of software that the documentarians could remember that literally had a black woman on the cover.
Right,
The software was named after her. So they kind of go down the rabbit hole on this software and find out that Mavis Beacon doesn't exist. Wholly made up. So then the question is, why would you put a black woman named Mavis Beacon on your software?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why? It's, from a marketing perspective at the time, it's just not something you would do.
Right.
So, so then they go down the rabbit hole of like, well, who created this software and why did they name it that way? And also, who's this woman on the cover?
Right. Who's
if
the,
it's not,
yeah, if it's not Mavis Beacon.
Right. If it's not Mavis Beacon, then who is it? So they find out who made the software and interview them or interview one of them, one of like the two main guys that wrote the software. And I'll leave it for people to watch the documentary to discover some of the answers to those questions. And they also discover who the model was for the cover. And they can't get this woman who's now like in her 80s, I think 70s or 80s, to talk to them. Like she has no interest in talking to them about this,
really,
essentially.
Okay.
And it's kind of a mystery as to why you wouldn't want to talk about it, because they're basically just want to glaze her up and be like, it's so great. Like the fact that you were the model on this thing, like inspired us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? As like young African-American ladies, like we just didn't have any representation. And even though you're just a model, like we want to talk to you about it. She wants nothing to do with them, basically. And all of that sounds kind of interesting, but I found the documentary past the precursor education of like what Mavis Beacon is and why they're trying to find answers to it. I found all that interesting, but then the back half, when they're trying to get Mavis, the model that played Mavis Beacon on the cover, to talk to them, it was just so full of annoying Gen Z stuff.
Oh, really?
Like Gen Z thinking, like that I was just like annoyed by it.
Can you give an example without necessarily spoiling it? But
like they don't want to bother her, the woman who played Mavis Beacon.
Oh, like it feels like they're trying to really respect her boundaries.
They're trying to respect her boundaries, which is like all well and great, but it makes for a really boring documentary to just have like two people in their early 20s argue back and forth over whether they should bother this woman. You know what I mean? I'm like,
yeah.
Just show up at her house and let her tell you to get lost. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
So you want them to do what Michael Moore did to Charlton Heston? Like, let's show up at his house. This poor aging man.
There's a second option here.
Okay.
Or don't do that and don't spend 30 minutes of a documentary not doing either.
Right. So you say you don't need to see the back and forth of the conversation.
There's literally half an hour on the back side of this documentary where they're trying to get this woman to talk to them, but without actually contacting her.
Without actually asking her to talk to them.
Right.
Okay.
And then the documentary ends.
Right. So that sounds like the Gen Z problem of we have to make a phone call. Like, well, I don't want to make a phone call. Do you want to make a phone call? I don't make a phone call.
Right. I don't talk on the phone.
I don't talk on the phone.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a month since I've seen this, but I think they literally have that conversation. Like, is a phone call too imposing? Maybe we can send an email.
Oh,
I'm like,
okay.
just call the lady and have her tell you to get lost. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it was just a lot of that kind of stuff. That being said, the soundtrack was great. The documentary itself, well made, I guess. I've never made a documentary, so better than anything I can make. But it really, the last 30 minutes really annoyed me because it went nowhere. And it was a lot of debate over something that they could have just gotten the answer to by picking up the phone and calling the poor woman.
And she could have been like, screw you, I don't want to talk to you.
But then they probably wouldn't have had a feature-length documentary because the running time on it's 102 minutes. And if you cut out the last half hour, you have a short. You don't have a movie. And so that's probably why
70 minutes. It's I guess what is feature length? Is it over 70 or is it over 80?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. Anyway, yeah.
If your documentary is an hour and 10 minutes, it might technically be a feature-length movie, but it's not really a feature-length movie. That's like a 2020, segment or
extended episode of 2020.
right.
2-hour special.
It's a frontline episode.
Right.
So anyway, I was a little annoyed by it. Maybe take generation, or I don't know what you'd call it, but the age gap between me and them
right.
into account, and maybe that wouldn't annoy you, but it annoyed me. So I was out. My number 8.
Fair. My number 8 is actually the movie that you guys discussed last week, which I was sick for the show, but I'm excited to talk to you about now. Mickey 17, the latest Bong Joon-ho starring Robert Pattinson.
All right.
I did not know a lot of this movie going into it. I tried to avoid trailers as most I could. I did know that it was delayed often, so kind of a late release. I kind of figured it has to do with cloning of some sort, but I didn't know a lot going into it. And when I got out of this movie, I thought, man, there's like half a dozen half-baked ideas in this movie, and none of them were quite pulled off correctly.
Okay.
There's a lot going on in this movie. Yeah, I mean, I know you guys discussed this already. I've not listened to your episode yet. Zach and I texted a little bit. I know Zach did not like the movie.
Right.
But it sounded like you and Araya did like it.
I liked it well enough.
Okay.
Like, I don't think it's going to be a classic or anything. Not even close to my favorite Bong Joon-ho movie. But I saw things in it that Zach did not see.
Okay.
Sure.
This is a movie where you have so many different like plot threads, where you have the idea of human cloning, 3D printing, however you want to call it. You have the idea of like, well, what if there's doubles or multiples? You have this sort of authoritarian Trump-like personality in it. You have a story about ecology and colonialism and like native creatures. You have a story about late-stage capitalism. Like, there's Bong Joon-ho covers a lot of these things before, and it kind of feels like he took all the ideas he had in Snowpiercer and Okja and The Host and kind of put in the blender, but didn't really blend it very well. Left it kind of chunky, and then poured it out, and that was Mickey 17. And I was just watching this movie and thinking, like, you could cut 2 of these things out, and it would still be a complete movie. Like, you could have a movie about authoritarianism and colonialism and get rid of the 3D printing part of it. Or you could have a story about capitalism and cloning and get rid of the creatures. Like, there's just so many different. I don't know. It was too much that, but nothing felt like it was fully thought out. In fact, the moment where all the creatures are on the snow, like circling, and Mickey's going out to talk to them, I was falling asleep in the theater during that moment. Like, I was nodding off because I was like, this is taking so long and so uninteresting right now.
Yeah, the last like sequence, I think they spent too much time on what's his name? Hulk.
Ruffalo.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo.
Yes. Yeah.
And as much as I like that character, like, it was an interesting performance, there was just like a lot of Mark Ruffalo stuff there at the end that was, I mean, it was a combination of that and like, yeah, they should have cut like 15 minutes out of the end of that movie for sure.
If I was to rename this movie, it'd be Mickey 17 minutes too long.
Sure.
Yeah,
definitely. My biggest issue with the movie, since you haven't listened to our discussion, was that, like, spoiler alert for Mickey 17. Well,
sure.
Depends on how much you know about Mickey 17. If you've seen the trailer, it's not really a spoiler, but
yeah.
So one of the big premises of the movie, or like a big recurring element, is like people asking Mickey what it's like to die.
Oh, I think you're going with this, but yeah,
they
keep
just
going.
keep asking, and it's supposedly a big deal, or like in this world it's rude to ask him what it's like to die or something like that. Meanwhile, like, how would he know? They dump his memory once a week. He doesn't remember dying.
Exactly. That was a huge issue I had. It's not like he's like connected to the cloud. Like, right. They download his memories to a hard drive once a week or whatever.
He doesn't remember the dying part.
No. Like, if anything, the new version wakes up and the last thing you remember was the last download.
Right.
So it's not like, oh, man, I died again. Like, they have to tell you, oh, by the way, you died. Here's what happens.
Right.
Yeah, that was a huge, I hate to say plot hole because I don't like that word, but that really felt like a oversight of this movie.
For sure. I can't imagine if you and I thought it watching it, then there is no chance they didn't know that was an issue, and they just clearly didn't care because there's nothing in the movie to combat that criticism, because it's a pretty basic criticism.
Yeah.
But it didn't kill the movie for me because there's like Bong Joon-ho I like messy movies, and he stuffed it with so much weirdness that that unless it was really truly awful, I was going to like it, which is why I lean on like I like it, but I don't think it's perfect. Like, I think Snowpiercer is definitely the Bong Joon-ho sci-fi weird movie.
Right. Agreed.
That like defines his career and is tight from one side to the other. This is in the same world as Snowpiercer, but not as good.
No.
So.
No. I will say also, you said you liked the Mark Ruffalo performance.
Mm-hmm.
I found it to be a little too on the nose. And maybe when this movie was being made and they thought, that guy won't be president again, it won't be fun to poke fun at that, it was one thing. But to watch that movie now and what we're living with Trump, and to see someone essentially doing a Trump impression, like it felt like an SNL sketch at times. There was times where he wasn't even like parodying Trump. He was just doing Trumpian things.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, like, again, I want to keep talking about Trump, but Trump himself is such a parody of a person that's hard to parody him, because like he freaking sold Teslas on the White House lawn last week. Like that is an Idiocracy sketch that has come to life. I don't want to get too political. Sure. I was just like, okay, this is not the time or place that I want to be watching someone poking fun at the person who is currently running the country.
Yeah. I think
maybe it would have been funny if the election went a different way, but here we are. So
it was supposed to come out like last year before summer. They kept delaying it.
They kept delaying it. Yes.
Yeah. I think the studio didn't have a lot of faith in the movie, and they may have been justified. I think no matter when they released it, the same basic issues would have been there.
Right.
Maybe the Trump one wouldn't be as bad as it is today, but I mean, this time last summer, we were already sick of Trump too.
We're exactly.
So the other thing I learned that's kind of crazy to me is that they filmed this movie before Ruffalo filmed Poor Things.
Oh.
And that, to me, they're similar performances. Not exactly, but they're both like very heightened, way more heightened than Mark Ruffalo normally is in movies. So I'm wondering if he took his experience on Mickey 17 and refined it in Poor Things in a way.
I believe it, because the Poor Things character feels a subtler version. He's more of a Lothario.
Sure.
Yeah, than this. Yeah, interesting. The other thing that made me really mad at this movie, and you probably remember this, at the very end, there's like a quick, it was just a dream moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems so unnecessary. But also, like, what was happening in that dream was like, oh, that would have been actually an interesting twist to this movie. But then he like wakes up and you're like, oh, it was a fake out. And it made me so mad at the moment. I cannot tell you how pissed off I was.
Well, if you were already looking for it to be done, then I can understand why a false ending that really changes none of the commentary of the movie.
Nothing gets changed. No.
Or anything. It's just there to give you like a 30-second thrill.
Yeah,
basically.
That's all. It's like it's not a jump scare, but it's the same effectiveness as a jump scare.
Sure.
Like what? Like, oh, that was nothing. Okay, yeah, that. So, but anyway, by that point, I was ready for the movie to be over. I'm like, this is so stupid.
Sure.
Anyway.
Yeah. I still think the movie has merit as just kind of like a messy auteur. Like they gave him all the money he wanted, and they gave him Final Cut because it was his follow-up to Parasite, and man, did he cash those checks in.
Did he? Yeah. I mean,
he made exactly what he wanted, and the studio took him a year, but they put it out even though they knew that thing was not going to go anywhere.
you liked Megalopolis also for the same reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I like big swings. I think Mickey 17 is a big swing. Not as big as Megalopolis. Megalopolis is crazy. But like, I'd put it's lower on the scale. But as far as like messy, weird sci-fi movies go, it's up there with, Southland Tales and Megalopolis for me.
Right.
That being said, I'm probably least excited to rewatch Mickey 17 compared to a Southland Tales or a Megalopolis.
Oh, yeah. And I would definitely rewatch. Well, I'm not going to rewatch any of those movies, but I'd definitely rewatch Parasite or Snowpiercer before I rewatch Mickey 17.
Absolutely. All right. Now, my
what's your number
7 from 1991, Only the Lonely, which is a 3.5-star movie for me. Not bad. Definitely better than average, but not by, a terrible amount. This movie stars John Candy and Ali Sheedy, James Belushi, Maureen O'Hara. It's directed by Christopher Columbus.
Oh, yeah.
It's produced by John Hughes, of all people.
Okay.
Because, John Hughes and Chris Columbus made a bunch of movies together.
Right.
So in this movie, John Candy plays like a bachelor in his 40s or late 30s, and he lives with his mother, and she's super overbearing. He gets a girlfriend that she doesn't approve of. And then it's kind of like a duplex situation where it's like the old lady throwing a wrench in everybody's plans, and she's just kind of sabotaging things constantly. I don't know why there's like this between those two movies, kind of a similar conceit. Not exactly similar, but the idea of like an older person, causing problems for everybody else, basically. And I found it pretty charming and funny, if kind of unrealistic at times, for sure. This was another one, kind of like Duplex, where I didn't expect much of it because I at least heard of Only the Lonely before, just never saw it.
Yeah.
And so I'm always down for a new John Candy movie that I haven't seen that turns out to be not awful, because he's got a couple that you probably never heard of that are really bad. But this one was totally watchable, and this one hasn't completely gone away over time, which is why I knew the name of it, and I enjoyed it. If you like these types of movies from the 90s, if you like John Candy and just want a new John Candy movie to watch, I think this is probably worth a poke. If none of that matters to you at all, then probably don't watch this, because that's pretty much what it has to offer. You know what I mean? Like, it's not so funny that if you have zero interest in it, it's going to be good for you anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I think you have to go into it already having some investment into it. Otherwise, you're probably wasting your time. So
how would you compare this movie to like Trapped in Paradise, the Nicolas Cage Christmas movie we watched?
Better.
Better. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely better. Yeah. This is like Who's Harry Crumb and Great Outdoors.
Okay.
Summer, like other John Candy movies. If you like those, you'll probably like this one too. Maybe not as much as like his classic movies, but it might be one you haven't seen yet, and I think it's worth a poke if that's the case.
I have not seen this movie, but I definitely recognize this VHS poster from the movie store.
Yeah.
I've seen this. I've seen that cover many times.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, my number 7 is moving into movies that I did enjoy. First 3, varying results. These next couple are, well, from here on out, these are all movies that I enjoyed. And the first one is a 2025 animated movie that I saw a couple weeks ago called Dogman. This is a adaptation of the Dogman books, which my son absolutely loves. There are many voices in this, like Pete Davidson, Little Rel Howery, Isla Fisher, Ricky Gervais. Ironically, Dogman himself does not talk, so there are no dog. He does not have a voice, but all the other characters in the story do talk. Dogman is a silly children's book. It's a graphic novel about a cop and a canine who are partners. They're in an accident, and the only way they can be saved is by having the dog's head attached to the human's body. That creates Dogman, who becomes this crime-fighting Dogman, who mainly fights Petey the cat and other such criminals. This is a world of humans, so it's not just animals, but it's definitely a mix of humans and animals. Everyone can talk. Everyone has personalities. It's all very strange. It's very much coded for like elementary school kids. A lot of, like fart humor. It's very similar to, it's the same guy who did Captain Underpants, Dav Pilkey. He also wrote Dogman. But my son absolutely loves these books. He's read them all. I've read them all with him. And this movie captured the book. I really felt like I was watching Dogman, the graphic novel, the movie. The book itself, the animation, or I should say the book pictures they're rather crude in that sort of Captain Underpants style. They're all two-dimensional. And this movie is 3D, but it still kind of keeps that 2D-ness of it. So it keeps sort of the crudeness while also giving us 3D characters. The humor is definitely there. I felt like I was definitely within the world of Dogman. It kept that same humor. And I was surprised how many like plot lines and characters it gave us from different books. So it's not like a direct adaptation of just one book. It's sort of like the universe of Dogman all put into one movie, which I was surprised they gave us so much from one movie, because I'm assuming they're making more of these. And I was like, I'm just going to save something for the other books, the other movies, but they gave us a lot of like different story threads all in this one movie. So yeah, really enjoyed it as a reader of a fan of all the books. And I think, anyone could watch this movie, but I don't know if people need to rush out to see it unless they have a child or a connection to the Dogman series.
Sure. And Galen enjoyed it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he thought it was great. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's the most important, right?
Exactly. I'm glad I enjoyed it, but I'm really glad that he was like, really having a good time at it. So,
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Number 6. This is the Tom Green documentary.
Is that what it's called?
That's what it's called.
Okay.
Did you ever watch Tom Green?
Oh, yeah.
Remember how the theme song for his MTV show was like, "This is the Tom Green show. It is my favorite show."
Yes.
Well, they just took that lyric and changed it from "This is the Tom Green show" to "This is the Tom Green documentary."
Okay.
Anyway, if you've never watched it, you wouldn't understand the title, which is a weird thing. I guess they don't expect anybody to hit play unless you already know who Tom Green is.
Yeah, I mean, he's not
Otherwise, why would you be
culturally
watching?
relevant anymore.
Sure. I mean, certainly not in the way he was at the end of the 90s and the early 2000s,
No,
for sure.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he was ever truly relevant.
He was relevant to the MTV crowd in that era because he had his show. He was in, he had Freddie Got Fingered and Road Trip.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't he married to Drew Barrymore for a while? Or
yeah. He was married to Drew Barrymore. He dated the intern that had the scandal with Bill Clinton.
Oh, Monica Lewinsky.
He dated Monica Lewinsky.
Right, he did date her. Yeah.
When he was married to Drew Barrymore, their house burned down in the Hollywood Hills. Do you remember that tabloid story at the time?
Didn't he also have testicular cancer? And he had like a whole special on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he did 2 seasons of his television show on MTV. It was a huge hit. They moved from Canada to New York to do the MTV show.
Mm-hmm.
The MTV show was a hit. Then they moved from New York to LA and did the 2nd season from LA. Then he got testicular cancer, had to cancel the show.
Mm-hmm.
He did a special while he was being treated for
Right.
testicular cancer. Right as he got out of that, he signed contracts to start making his own movie. And so basically moved directly from the TV show directly into making his own movie. He was in a couple movies before he actually got his own movie out. But between having to quit the TV show, like the 1-2 punch of having to quit the TV show and then having a couple years where like he's in movies, but he's not the main character.
Yeah.
And then the movie where he's the main character comes out and it bombs hard critically and with audiences.
Yeah.
It basically killed his career. Like
Right.
those two things killed his career, basically.
Get-
Or at least killed all momentum.
For people who are listeners who are not familiar with Tom Green, like in 30 seconds, summarize what his show is like.
Yeah, it's a talk show with on the street segments.
Yeah.
And in the on the street segments, he is a prankster, very much like what's his name? The guy on not Comedy Central. He's on the Cartoon Network right now. Eric Andre.
Oh, okay.
You've seen the Eric Andre show? It's basically a slightly more sane version of that, I would say. His Tom Green's show was. Yeah, he would do like on the street skits and taped segments where he would just act like a weirdo on the streets and they would get reactions from people.
The one that stands out to me was he was dressed up like a cow in a field at night.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was drinking from the teat of a live cow in this field.
He did that a couple times. Yeah.
Okay, is that a couple times he did that?
I mean, there was one where he is wearing a dress, an ill-fitting dress.
Okay.
He's got a blonde Courtney Love-esque wig on, and it's just like the rattiest hair,
Mhm.
long
I can
blonde
picture
hair
this. Yeah,
you can
yeah.
imagine. And he's contorting his body, eating Vaseline. And by
Yes.
eating, I mean just shoving Vaseline into his
Yep.
mouth and like making moaning sounds while the camera's just capturing the reactions of all the
People
people
around,
on the
yep.
street who just think he's absolutely insane. And my description of it does not do it justice. The first time I saw that segment, I laughed my butt off.
Yeah,
'Cause
like,
it's
like,
just
what-
so
like, what is this guy
absurd.
doing? Yeah, exactly.
It was so out there, so absurd. And like the people of Canada, where that segment was filmed, are so nice that like they just don't know what to do with him. You know what I mean? Like if you did that like in the streets of New York or LA, they would like call the police on you. But up in Canada in the late 90s, mid 90s, they were like, you know, nice to him basically.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
you okay, sir?
Anyway,
Anyway, the
one-
documentary.
the documentary is in two parts. Basically, the pandemic happened and Tom Green took it very seriously and like didn't hang out with anyone for like a year.
Mhm.
Got a camper and just like went to the desert, basically like camped at the desert with him and his dog and like shot vlogs for YouTube type of thing because he was doing stand-up comedy and couldn't tour. Then once vaccines started coming out, he was like, okay, well, what do I want to go back to LA or do I want to like use this opportunity to switch things up, which is how a lot of people were thinking during the pandemic. So he decided he was going to sell his Hollywood Hills home and move back to Canada, which he did. He sold his like 1,500 square foot house in LA and bought this ginormous 100-acre property
Wow.
in Canada and built like this giant house on it. And he's like, it's amazing how cheap it is to build something in the middle of, you know, nowhere Canada.
Right.
compared-
Yes.
Compared to the
Everything's a lot
Hollywood
cheaper.
Hills.
Yep.
Yeah. So half the documentary is like exploring his current life on a farm in Canada, which is night and day different than 25 years ago when he was like at the height of his fame and he was on the cover of Rolling Stone and, you know, hosting Saturday Night Live and stuff like that. So it's him reflecting on his journey and
Mhm.
also learning about what he's up to today. And it was fine. I mean, I'm a Tom Green fan. I used to run a Tom Green fan site because after the MTV stuff he did, he started doing a live broadcast from his living room in Hollywood.
Okay.
We're talking circa 2006, 2007.
Oh,
This
so
was
like very early streaming.
very early streaming.
Yeah.
Like YouTube was like a year old. You know what I mean? Like it was very, very early. You had to have servers where you were in order to stream, essentially. And he was doing it from his house, and I loved his web show. And so I created a blog where I would like predict what his next guests would be on it. And he liked it so much that he basically hired me and another guy to run it without paying us.
Oh, okay. So not hired. He
made the site official.
Okay.
Essentially, he's like, "Oh, you're already doing this. I like what you're doing. I'll just endorse it and let you use my name and likeness, and it'll be like a part of the thing." And I was like, "Cool." And I was already doing it for free because I was a fan, and so was the other guy. And so the site ran for like another 6 months, and then he quit doing the show from his house. So it basically died on the vine. But anyway, the point in telling you this is that I'm a big Tom Green fan. I've always liked him. Even like he's never been as funny as he was in the MTV show, in my opinion. But he seems like a genuine person. And also he can be like a real jerk. But I think it's an act. Like the jerk part. I think in reality he's a nice person, but part of his act is to be a jerk.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Anyway. So I'm always up for like seeing what Tom Green's up to. That's why I watch the documentary. If you have no interest in Tom Green, I don't know if there's much here for you. Like from a documentary perspective. Oh, the other thing to note about this documentary is that he directed it.
Oh.
And it's weird to direct the documentary about yourself.
I mean, you're definitely telling the story you want to tell about yourself. Right.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that like I would criticize this documentary for. One is like exactly what you said. When you're the documentarian telling your own life, you're going to leave things out. And there are definitely some skits from back in the day, especially the stuff that he shot in Canada, that is like, they're pretty problematic. It's nothing like assault or like anything like that. It's just taking advantage of homeless people and you know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
That he just blows right over. You know what I mean? Like, even though some of those are like some of the most memorable stuff, that is not in the documentary type of thing.
And no one's saying, so, hey, what was it like taking advantage of these people? Like no one's taking the task for it.
And there's a couple like meltdowns I've seen him have that I don't know if I know that some of them weren't an act, is not covered in the documentary. And so it's a little sanitized, I would say. And if you already follow Tom Green, there's probably not a lot to learn here. But I enjoyed it. Well,
right.
enough.
I probably will not watch it because I've not thought about Tom Green much in the last 20 years. But,
sure. Fair enough.
But if you're a super fan, makes sense.
even if you were just like a big fan 20 years ago and you're just like, what happened to that guy?
Yeah.
And you want an easy watch, that's what this is. It's going to make you laugh. Probably won't make you cry, but it'll be like, what happens to the class clown 25 years later? You know what I mean? Are they still the class clown? In his case, yes, but only when he's on stage. Anyway, go ahead. What was your number 6?
My number 6 is a movie actually I saw today in the theater, again with my son, another animated kids movie. This is the latest Looney Tunes movie called The Day the Earth Blew Up. This movie stars Porky and Daffy. There's names like, you know, voice actors, but I don't recognize any of them. So,
sure.
Porky and Daffy, they're like, I guess, adopted brothers. You know, they were adopted by a farmer. They live together. And they can no longer hold a job or keep their house upkept. And they need to make money to keep their house kept up. So they get a job at a bubblegum factory. But they discover a alien conspiracy at said bubblegum factory, and that kind of kicks off the entire plot of the movie. And a lot of it is Porky trying to be the sort of the sane one, where Daffy is being the crazy kind of loony one.
Sure.
And I kind of forgot that Daffy Duck was supposed to be the sort of crazy Looney Tune character,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know. I always just thought of him. I always think of him in like Elmer Fudd, and like Elmer Fudd's also kind of a weirdo, so they kind of seem equally weird. But in this movie, you definitely have Daffy being like grabbing the giant hammer and being super crazy and going down these weird rabbit hole conspiracies.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Daffy Duck is kind of like this crazy character, and I'm glad that they incorporated that into like the actual plot and story of the movie. It appears to be 2D. It appears to be 2D animated to me, at least like the characters are,
Okay.
which I thought was impressive. Like kind of at
Sure.
the end during the credits, they have like the sketch drawings. I'm like, oh, it looks like they did this in hand drawn 2D style.
Is it full Looney Tunes or is it like a Looney Tunes in live action type story?
It is fully animated.
Okay, that's cool.
Yep. Yeah, and
I like
it
that.
has the orchestra. It kind of feels like watching a extra long Looney Tunes episode,
Mm-hmm.
because it's got the music, it's got the orchestra. Like there's moments where there's no dialogue. Like the sound is just telling the story along with what's on screen, which is a lot of fun. There are like homages to other movies, but they're not kid movies. It's like homages to movies like The Thing, like John Carpenter's The Thing. And it's crazy to be watching this movie, and there is like a bubblegum monster that reminds you of the dogs from The Thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like roaring and contorting. And I'm watching this movie like, I think some kids would be scared by this movie right now.
Hmm.
Like my 9-year-old was not scared by it, but I can imagine like a 5 or 6-year-old being like, whoa, this is a little intense with this
Sure.
body horror like monster on screen right now.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's super fun. And I grew up watching old Looney Tunes cartoons on like Nickelodeon or whatever had the reruns, and this just kind of felt like it existed within that Looney Tunes universe. And I'm kind of glad they use like, not that Porky and Daffy aren't major characters, but they're not Bugs Bunny.
Right. Which we've seen to death at this point.
We've seen Space Jam a couple times, and we've seen other Bugs Bunny movies, and it was kind of nice it's got these other characters given a chance to shine
Sure.
and just be goofy and be loony.
Absolutely. I'm into it. I don't know if I'll ever see it, but I support it.
I am sure it'll be on HBO Max sooner rather than later because it's Warner Brothers.
Right. Right.
And I don't know. It's 90 minutes long. It's entertaining. It's goofy. You could do worse with your time.
Sure. All right. Speaking of worse with my time, my number 5 was Nickel Boys.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is another 3.5 Letterboxd ranked movie for me. This was on my list of regrets from when we made our top 20 lists of 2024, because this was a movie that was getting all kinds of awards buzz at the end of the year, I would say.
Yes.
It was in those discussions. It ended up just getting like 1 or 2 Academy Award nominations and no wins, I don't believe.
Right. As Best Picture and
Something else.
maybe a screenplay or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And I don't. Here's the thing with this movie.
Okay.
It's super interesting from a presentational perspective because it's told in first person. We've talked about this in the past, but I'll just, for people who haven't heard those episodes,
Yeah.
told in first person. It's not like found footage style where like there's a documentary crew or anything. It's literally just like the camera is from the perspective of a character. And the camera's perspective will move from one character to another in any given scene. So you'll have 2 characters talking, and the person that's one person will be the perspective of the camera, and the other person's talking directly into the lens. And then the camera will just kind of switch positions on you at some point during the conversation. And then all of a sudden you'll realize, oh, like subtly my perspective is now the person that used to be looking down the lens. Now the person who used to be the camera perspective is the one looking directly into the lens. So it's interesting. The entire movie is shot that way. It makes for really long, unbroken scenes.
Okay.
Basically long take scenes because there's no cutting. Like whenever you need to move from one place to another, you just, that's when you cut, basically. It's a period piece movie. It's very well acted, but it's super low key to the point of kind of being boring.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Because the effect of the filmmaking style will only take you so far. I at least for me, it took me
Right.
so far. Like about an hour in, I understood what they were doing with the camera, which leaves you with the story. And the story was fine, but it wasn't like the style, the filmmaking style wasn't necessary for the story they were telling,
Okay.
which meant that once you got over the filmmaking style, you're kind of like, well, why are we telling it like this when you don't really have to?
Yeah, so that's what I haven't seen this movie, but I was curious. Like, does it feel gimmicky or does it feel unnecessary?
It does not feel gimmicky because
Okay.
it's really well executed.
Sure.
But it also, you could have told this story without it, and it would have probably been just as effective. You know what I mean? Like it didn't it didn't amplify the story either. And on paper, the story is it's about a boys' school where like orphans go, basically. That's probably not the politically correct term, but
No, I think orphan's fine.
do people still use orphan? That feels very negative. Orphan.
I mean,
Am I just being
it's-
too woke?
I think you're being you can
Okay.
dial down the woke a little bit.
All right.
It's
I'll dial it
2025,
down.
man. You can do whatever you want.
I'm just saying. I don't want to call people things that, you know.
I don't think I mean, what's the other parentless?
Sure.
Foster children?
None of
you know
those
what-
feel better.
Okay. Quick tangent. Know what I do not like?
What?
When people who say the word unalive now instead of dead. Oh, he was unalived.
I mean, I don't like it when people say that in real life, but when they say it online, they have to say it. You can't
say dead?
You can say, okay, you can say dead. You can't, if it's somebody who took their own life, you can't say the word for that on YouTube.
Oh, so that's why they say they unalive themselves.
Right.
Oh, I thought this was like okay. So
You
if
also
people
can't- you
responding
also
to the
can't say it on-
algorithm.
Yeah, you can't say it on TikTok either. You can't say the S word on TikTok or YouTube without getting
Oh.
your video immediately demonetized.
I gotcha. Okay. So this is a reaction to the algorithm and to the content controls, not just an overcorrection of people like we're not using. Okay, interesting.
That being said, I've heard my nephew say the word unalived in a real life conversation.
Well, I
And I
mean,
was
but that
like,
makes
don't say that around me. Just say the real word. I
But, like,
understand where you learned that from. but-
yes, like I understand my annoyance too, but like if you think about if that's how he engages with the world is via TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, and that's the language that's being used on there, that's the language he's then going to incorporate into his daily speech.
I get it, but I don't want the whims of an algorithm to affect my private conversation with my nephew. You know what I mean?
What, James? The algorithm rules all. You are just a number to
He
the
can say suicide in front of me. I will not hold it against him or demonetize him or whatever. I don't know.
I don't know. Did you just get our video pulled by saying that word?
We're not monetized anyway.
Okay,
so
we're not monetized, so it's fine.
Yeah. So Nickel Boys.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I digressed there. Apologize.
It's fine. So these orphans get sent to this camp and in Florida, and it's a period piece from like the 60s or 50s, something like that. 1962. And at this camp for orphans, they separate the
Really gotta lean
white
into that one.
they separate the white kids from all the other kids.
Yeah.
Essentially. And the white kids get good treatment and the other kids don't. basically. And every time it's time to show what bad treatment is, they always cut away from it,
Okay.
which is fine. I'm okay with that. It just left me only with the basic plot and the filmmaking style. You know what I mean? And the filmmaking style, I figured it out, before the first hour.
Right.
So
yeah.
the trick was revealed. Now, if you don't pay attention to these things, then maybe like that will keep you engaged longer. There just wasn't enough to the story for me to like make it a movie that I'm going to love and champion for the rest of my life. 3.5 is not a bad score for a movie. It's just, I probably had a real high expectation because of the hype on this one. And then when I saw it, I was like, yeah, okay. I saw it. I get it.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's the most artistic version of a first person perspective movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
For that, it's probably worth seeing if you're like a movie person. Like don't get all hyped up over it because it's not going to be like the most amazing thing you've ever seen, which is what I was kind of hoping for.
Yeah.
So
is it a lot of people like looking directly at camera?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of that, but it's done really well.
Okay.
Like I said, it's the best version of that for sure. And it because of the long takes, it has some ingenuity to it, I would say, because you're having to move the camera and switch perspectives and there's good things here for sure from a filmmaking perspective. From a plot perspective, it's kind of thin.
Yeah.
So anyway, my number 5.
All right. For my number 5, we've moved into 4-star territory. And this is also a 2024 regret, though I was able to catch this before the Oscars, and that is A Real Pain. This is directed by Jesse Eisenberg, also stars Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin, as well as Jennifer Grey's in this movie, who I did not recognize because I haven't seen Jennifer Grey in a movie in like 35 years.
I when I watched it, I looked it up because I recognized her, but I could not place her at all, and then I did.
Because she also had some facial surgery, I think.
She's getting older.
Right, but I believe also, so like if you see her in what is it, Dirty Dancing and Ferris Bueller's Day Off and other movies in that era, she has a very prominent nose.
Yes.
Right? Yes. And
she's changed that, yes.
Right. I heard kind of like in the 90s, people are like, oh, you gotta get rid of the nose because it's too prominent. So she got rid of the nose, but then no one like recognized her anymore. So because then she looked like everyone else.
I mean, I'm looking at her now. It's clear,
Okay.
like cheekbones, chin. She's got the whole works.
Right. Well, yeah, it's 35 years later too. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying she does look different than she did in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I did not recognize her until the end. I saw the name like, oh, that's Jennifer Grey. And then it all kind of clicked together. But so anyways, this movie is written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg. It's about two cousins played by Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin, who they're essentially brothers. They're pretty much the same age. They kind of grew up together. And they are Jewish American, and they decide to travel back to Poland to visit their grandmother's town because their grandmother came from Poland during the war to America, and this is sort of them kind of like returning to their roots and seeing like where they came from. So this movie is a bit of like a buddy road trip movie. It's a travelogue in the sense as these two are exploring Poland and their history and the sort of the world events that led them to be Americans and not Polish people, and then kind of exploring a little bit of his like wow, isn't it crazy how life turned out, and a little bit of guilt of like, well, should we have stayed in Poland, or what would it be like if we were Polish and not American. And then at the same time, you also have kind of Jesse Eisenberg wrestling with the personality of Kieran Culkin, of his cousin, because you get the impression that his cousin, or you don't get the impression, you see that Kieran Culkin's character is very charismatic. People like him. He's very outgoing, but he can also be very difficult at times. And like,
Mhm.
you know, will say things that kind of get under people's skin, or will get sort of attached to an idea and not want to let go of it. And, you know, Jesse Eisenberg is wrestling with, like, I live in New York. I'm very successful. I have a family. I've lived the dream, but why does my weird cousin seem more happy than I am?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's definitely, I would call this a dramedy. Um, and Jesse Eisenberg he's playing Jesse Eisenberg. Like at no point did I feel like he disappeared into that role. He's kind of playing what I expect from him,
Mhm.
sort of the neurotic guy. But Kieran Culkin, who I don't have a lot of experience with, I never watched Succession. I mostly know him as Fuller from Home Alone series. He's great in this movie. Like he
Mhm.
obviously won an Oscar for it, completely deserves it from what I saw, because he really just runs away with this role, and it really encompasses this character. And I feel like this is a person that we all know. Like his name's Benji. We all have a Benji in our life, where someone where you're like, man, you are so smart and charismatic, but man, your life is a mess.
Yeah, you just waste it, basically.
You just exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think he does an excellent job of capturing that character and bringing that character to life. So if anything, watch it for Kieran Culkin. But the whole movie's
Absolutely.
good.
I also liked the idea of them like wrestling with like their Jewish heritage
Yes.
and like what it actually means to them as guys who have grown up in the United States. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like
yeah.
they're very removed from the Holocaust, even though it's a very big presence in their life and their family's life and things like that. And so the idea of them going back and trying to figure out if this even means anything to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they know it should mean something to them, but does it? Type of thing. I thought that was good. If you liked Kieran in this, you should definitely at least try Succession, because he's basically playing the same character, but with
Okay.
way snappier, more devious dialogue in Succession. But it's him fast talking, cracking jokes in Succession, much like he is in here in A Real Pain. Like A Real Pain is like the earnest version of the same character.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The more
Basically.
down to earth. Well, I didn't see Succession, but I feel like this is
In Succession, he's just a jerk with a ton of money.
right. Okay.
You know what I mean? Who can say anything to anybody because his daddy is a billionaire. Anyway,
Succession might be the dramatic version of The Office for me, where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to watch it.
you should give it a few episodes.
You're right.
If a few episodes don't catch you, you can walk away, because it's that for 4 seasons.
Because at least I knew I tried it.
Right. And it's done in 4 seasons. I have a feeling, though, you'll get hooked pretty fast.
Are we talking like 10 episode seasons or 20, 30 episodes, 25 episodes?
No. This is a HBO show.
Okay,
It's
so we're looking at 10, 8
it's
to
like
10
8
episodes
to
per
10
season.
per
Okay.
season.
All right,
Yeah,
that's a little bit more doable.
8 to 10. They move fast. They're, I liked it. Number 4
Yes.
is from 2024, and it's September 5.
Okay.
Or September 5th, even though there's no TH in the title. This movie was nominated for screenplay and Best Picture. Was September 5 Best Picture? Yeah.
I don't think it was Best Picture, no.
It wasn't nominated for Best Picture?
I think it was just screenplay.
Just screenplay. Okay.
Yeah.
So September 5 is it centers around the Summer Olympics that was held in Germany in the early 70s, I believe.
The Munich 72 Olympics, yeah.
Right, exactly. This is the Olympics where what is it? The
Palestinian, I believe.
Palestinian terrorists
Yes.
essentially kidnapped the Israeli team. What were they? Like tennis players or something like that?
Was it with the track team, or I don't remember what sport the athletes played, but they were Israeli athletes.
I don't remember what sport either, but yeah, they were Israeli athletes. And this story is told from the perspective of the sports news crew that was over in Germany and actually in the building across from the hotel where the hostages were taken. And so they're there as a sports news team to cover the Olympics. Meanwhile, like this international incident is happening like right outside their back door. And so they quickly pivot from covering what was going on at the Olympics to this breaking news situation, even though they're not really that kind of reporters. You know what I mean? Like they report on the latest NBA scores. You know what I mean? They're not like hard hitting journalists, basically. Yeah. So, and then, so they have to like rapidly make decisions on what they're going to show, how they're going to frame the crisis, those types of things, because they're the closest to it and can do the best reporting on it in the moment. And so it's kind of like a potboiler thriller procedural from the perspective of news people, essentially. And it's really well written with snappy dialogue and good performances, but it felt really small at the same time, which might be a benefit to some people. I found it a little limiting, probably because I already know the story. Like it's a real thing that happened. There have been other movies about it. Spielberg's Munich, right? Wasn't that what it was called?
Munich's about this. Yes.
Yeah. That was far more exciting than this is. And it's, the exact same event. And so I couldn't help but watch this and think, why are we telling this when like this story's already been told by Steven Spielberg? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's not going to get a whole lot better than that. And from the perspective of like news procedural and like people being out of their element, it's interesting and probably worth watching for that. But at the same time, I was just kind of like, I don't know, this movie could not exist and it'd be fine. You know what I mean? Like if that doesn't interest you and you already know the story, then it's not a whole lot here for you.
So then like telling the story through the eyes of the sportscaster didn't really add much to it.
It was an interesting story from the perspective of watching news people be out of their element.
Yeah.
But it did nothing from the viewpoint of the actual event they're covering.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the actual event they're covering, they don't get into the politics of it at all. They don't get, you know what I mean? Like they don't touch that at all. It's all about like, how are we going to cover this when we're not prepared to cover this?
Right. And like, what are we going to show on TV? And yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah. Anyway, I didn't hate it.
Yeah. It's your number 4. So
it's my number 4, but I also was hoping for more. So
fair enough. All right. My number 4 is the third, but not final animated movie on my list. And this is 2024's Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul.
My number 3 is Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul.
Let's talk about it then. Great. Yeah. Perfect. Let's do it. Yeah. So this is the obviously the latest Wallace and Gromit movie. They have not done a movie since Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I love all things Wallace and Gromit. My son, my wife, we all love Wallace and Gromit and Aardman animation in this household. So we are very excited when not a new Chicken Run movie, but a new actual Wallace and Gromit movie came out. Because I love these characters. They really remind me of Inspector Gadget when I was a kid. Because you had like Inspector Gadget who had all these inventions, but he never actually could accomplish anything. And it really was Penny and the dog who were doing everything in the background to like make Inspector Gadget successful. And Wallace and Gromit feels the same way. Where like Wallace is the human, and he thinks that he's in charge of everything, but it's really Gromit's doing the heavy lifting throughout all their stories. Mm-hmm. And Gromit, he's a great character. He's wordless. He never speaks. He never makes a sound. He just tells his feelings through his facial expressions. And as a claymation character, they animate him amazingly, where you know exactly how Gromit feels the entire time as Wallace is going these crazy antics. In this movie, as you know, the crazy antic is Wallace invents a smart robot helper gnome to like do all the chores around the house so Gromit doesn't have to. And then the kind of something weird happens with it, we'll say. It sort of gets a mind of its own. And there is a shadowy figure from the past who might be behind all the machinations of this smart robot gnome. And Wallace and Gromit are trying to figure out what's going on. And I just find these movies super charming. And this one is right up there with all the other Wallace and Gromit shorts of just being super charming. The animation is amazing. Do you remember at the end, there's I think there's a train chase with cars, and they're doing, I would say, Fast and Furious style stunts in a claymation Wallace and Gromit movie that feels so kinetic and energetic. I was like, wow, they're making this action scene with these claymation characters look super exciting, which is really impressive. So I really feel like they've upped their filmmaking style also, where they can tell a small story, but also kind of blow out the action and make it all exciting as you have claymation dogs running around a bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add other than I was charmed by it too. I like Wallace and Gromit well enough. I mean, I remember watching all the shorts back in the day, and I saw Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and I've seen the Shaun the Sheeps. Right, that's from the same group. It's not Wallace.
Oh yeah, Shaun
and
the
Gromit,
Sheep. Have you seen Farmageddon?
I haven't seen that one, but
Galen. So Farmageddon has a ton of Easter eggs to sci-fi movies.
Okay.
Galen loves Farmageddon. You could enjoy Farmageddon.
Do you remember the one before that? Do you remember what that one was named?
Was that Flushed Away?
No. There was a Shaun the Sheep before.
Oh, it was called Shaun the Sheep the movie, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I liked that one. There's barely any talking in that one. Is there barely any talking in Farmageddon?
There's a bit. The humans talk.
Sure, but
right.
In the other one, there wasn't a lot of humans, though.
I would say Farmageddon has a bit more humans in it because it's a bigger story than Shaun the Sheep, but it's mostly the sheep who are not talking.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, I like Wallace and Gromit. I wouldn't say I'm a big fan. I've never seen any of them more than once, any type of thing. But I like this movie. I enjoyed it. I watched it alone at home. I laughed multiple times. I was totally engaged by it. It was fun and funny. And that's all I was looking for from it, and that's what I got. So I liked it.
Super fun.
Much better than the Chicken Run sequel.
Oh my goodness, the Chicken Run sequel.
Which I thought the Chicken Run sequel had its moments too, but it also overstayed a couple moments.
And the Chicken Run sequel, even though it's claymation, so much of the world felt CG or fake. Where this movie, the world felt much more tactile. Obviously they use CG in these movies too. I'm not faulting them for using CG.
Sure.
But the world just felt more real and tactile, and the characters were existing in it and not just on a green screen somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I guess I'll jump to my number 3. I don't think I've talked about this yet, but this is the last movie I had to watch to finish your top 100.
Oh, okay.
This is 2011's Miss Bala.
Yeah.
Yes. Which was a hard movie to find, but I eventually found it.
Sure.
This movie takes place in Mexico. It's about a poor woman who wants to enter a beauty queen pageant to kind of win some money so she can get a better life for herself. And she witnesses a cartel crime, and then essentially becomes she gets kidnapped by the cartel after witnessing this crime. She gets trafficked and becomes a mule and all the other things that a cartel would do with a young woman. And it's just sort of, this movie follows her as she descends farther and farther into the cartel world against her will, and has to do more and more awful things to try and survive.
Yeah, and you're just kind of rooting for her to figure a way out at some
Exactly.
point. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's not an easy movie to watch. Definitely things happen to her. I feel like the movie's tasteful about it, and it never feels like they're exploiting the character. But, she's also viewed as property by this cartel, whether it be for her body or for her ability to cross the border or for whatever else it could be. And yeah, you're just hoping like she gets out okay at the end.
Mhm.
But the filmmaking's really strong too, where she is the focus of this movie. And
Mhm.
I would say most things you see are from maybe not from her point of view, but she's in frame when they're happening. So like for example, there is a gang war breaks out while she's in the car. And she just kind of like ducks behind the seat and the camera stays on her the entire time while you hear gunfire, you hear screaming, glasses shattering in her car. Like she's reacting to this gang fight, but you're never actually seeing the fight happen. You're
Mhm.
just experiencing it through hers. But it's just as effective as if they were showing guys like shooting each other with guns and running around.
Sure.
And I would say like this is the movie that I was afraid Honora was going to be.
What, like a crime movie?
No, like in this movie, the whole time you're like, this poor woman, I hope she gets out of this.
Sure. She's
And-
like totally a victim from one
Right,
side to the other.
Yeah, she's a complete victim. She has like really no agency or say or control. She's just trying to survive.
Mhm.
And Honora could have been that movie.
Sure.
But like thankfully the Mikey Madison character or Nora has so much more agency and ability. And it's a different movie where she has control and she can have some say in her destiny, I guess is the way.
I mean, at any time she could have walked away from the money in Honora.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
She had an out.
Right. For sure.
Yes. Yeah. Where in this movie, you know, she does not have an out whatsoever.
Mhm.
I thought this movie was a mistranslation because it's called Miss Bala, but she enters the Miss Baja pageant. I was like, did they mess up the title? But apparently Bala means bullet. So it's if you speak Spanish, it's like a play on Baja Bala.
Sure.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this speaking of long takes, this movie has a bunch of long takes in it too.
It's multiple long takes.
Yeah. Super impressed. The scene at the nightclub at the beginning that like goes from like normal nightclub vibe to like total chaos, and then it like follows her as she's like trying to escape the nightclub.
Yeah. Yes. Like, the inciting
you
incidents.
might not even picked up the first time, but the second time you see that movie, you'll see all kinds of stuff you didn't see the first time from a filmmaking perspective.
I
it's
think I
crazy.
could watch this again. It's a tough watch. It's
give
not
it
the
like
worst
give it
watch
like a
I've ever seen.
decade and then revisit it, and it'll be good.
and look for the filmmaking style. I mean, I liked it. It's a
sure.
4-star movie. Like it's
Yeah.
my number 3. So
It's a good one. It's no Brat Patrol, but it's pretty good.
you know, I left Brat Patrol off this list because like we kind of talked about it. There's not much to say about Brat Patrol.
Sure.
It's just not a lot to talk about.
I agree. My number 2 has a lot to talk about if you've seen it. I don't know if you've seen it. I know Zach saw it, but I don't know if you've seen it. Memories of Murder from 2003.
Oh, the Bong Joon-ho film.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I've seen. It's been a long time, but I've
You've
seen it.
seen it. Okay.
Yep.
Do you remember anything about it? I mean, we're talking 22 years ago this thing came out, so.
Yes. I mean, I don't know. Do you want me to talk about it or just say yes? I remember it.
No, I mean, it's good enough to know that you saw
Okay.
it.
Yes, I've seen it.
I hadn't seen it. After I saw Mickey 17, I was like, I'm going to use this as a reason to watch another Bong Joon-ho movie. So
Mhm.
This was his highest rated movie that I had not seen yet. And so I watched it and enjoyed it. It's a police procedural thriller, I would say,
Yeah.
detective specifically, murder mystery type thing. And tells a story of a couple police officers who are trying to solve the murder of several women. They suspect it's a serial killer that's doing it because there's a pattern to this thing. And so it's them figuring out the clues, coming up with suspects, chasing down leads, interrogating suspects, that type of stuff. And it's really well acted. It's got twists and turns in it. Really well shot, perfectly paced. It's a long movie, but it didn't feel very long to me.
Right.
Like you're talking like 2 hours, 15 minutes or so roughly. But it just kind of flew by for me. There was some stuff in it that might be like a cultural thing, maybe.
Mhm.
I don't know. One of the police officers is very physical with suspects. I
I
would say.
know I remember who you're talking about. Yes.
And they really like do not blink Like the other police officers don't care. In fact, they like it when he
Mhm.
does stuff like that. And I'm like, that is very different than here in the United States. Like, because it's not even like a plot point. It's just how they're acting
Right. Yeah.
on screen. Whereas here in the United States, if that would be the plot, that would be the plot. You know what I mean? If one of the police officers was acting like that here in the States.
But I mean, this movie takes place in the 80s, correct? It's not a present day movie.
Yeah, it takes place in the 80s.
And I think if you had watched a cop film that took place in the 80s and you saw them kind of roughing up the suspect, you'd be like, yeah, it's the 80s. Where cops were a little.
I agree that like maybe I don't know. I feel like I certainly haven't seen every cop movie from the 80s, but the ones I did see, like the Lethal Weapons and stuff like that, if it happened, it was short and sweet. Whereas in Memories of a Murder, it happens all the time with that one guy. And not only that, he takes people, throws them on the ground, and stomps on them for like 30 seconds at a time.
Right. He's using like Taekwondo on these people.
Right. Yeah. It's like way over the top, excessive. It's kind of played for laughs a little bit.
It's like the little guy, right? Am I remember correctly?
He's like the smallest police officer.
The smallest one, yes. Yeah.
At one point, he's doing it to a suspect who's like mentally not all there. You know
right.
what I mean?
Yep.
Who's like I don't know what you'd say. Slow person. I don't know.
Mentally handicapped.
There you go. There you go.
What is it? Neurodivergent.
Why you got to be so woke, Kyle? Jeez.
I don't know. I'm just trying not to use the R word.
I know. I'm just kidding. Besides that, though, I enjoyed it. You know, whenever you're watching a foreign movie, you gotta go into it with an open mind, and
right.
It's not always going to have perfect, flawless 2025 content. You know what I mean? You have to put it in some kind of perspective, culturally and time wise. So
yeah,
you're talking 2003. Yeah. So there's 20 years of perspective plus the entire world. You know, this was made on the opposite side of the globe. So, but I did enjoy it. Thought it was well made. I understand why so many people like it and rank it highly in his filmography. And I was happy to check it off the list.
This movie really reminds me of David Fincher's Zodiac.
Yeah. Although that movie's deadly serious. There's like not a single joke in Zodiac.
True. Yes.
Whereas this one, I feel like there was comedic relief in this movie in a weird way. Because it's Bong Joon-ho. I don't think he can make a movie with just like one genre. He's got to like inject other genres into everything he's making for some reason. And there's a little bit of a comedic edge to this. It's not primary for sure. It's like maybe 10% of it. But yeah, from a procedural perspective, it's very similar to Zodiac.
Very similar. Yep.
Yeah. What's your number 2?
Good. Well, I'm glad you checked out Memories of Murder. My number 2 is a movie that both you and Zach have been asking me for a long time. Had you seen this? This is a 2024 movie. I finally did see it, and this is Flow, Best Picture winner.
Oh,
Flow.
okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, before you get into it.
Sure.
Flow and Wild Robot. What's the best animated movie of last year for you?
Man.
For you.
For me, I think it's still Wild Robot.
Okay. All right. I'm just curious because when we were making Oscar picks, you were like, you know, Zach and I were picking Flow, and you're like, I haven't seen it yet, so I can't say if it's better than Wild Robot. So I was just curious.
It's tough because
they're very different movies.
They're very different movies. I will say Flow is the movie that I thought Wild Robot was going to be when the teaser trailer came out. If you see the teaser trailer for Wild Robot, it is silent. It's just the robot and animals existing in nature. And I remember like Galen showing it to me. He's like, "Oh, this is a new movie coming out, and there's no talking. It's just the animals." And then you see the next trailer, I'm like, "Oh no, they're actually talking in this." But
sure,
Flow is that movie where it is the animals. There is no talking. It is they are just telling the story as they're existing in this post-human world. That is being flooded by it. We don't know why. A great flood is occurring, and we're following a cat who is trying to survive this flood. And it teams up with a dog and a capybara and a lemur, and they sort of band together to try and survive as a group. I mean, it's such a simple way to describe this movie, but that's essentially what the plot is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of people commented on the animation of this movie because it was made on open source software. So it's not maybe like texture wise, it's not the most
Realistic.
perfect animation.
Yeah.
But I thought all the animals moved and behaved exactly how I expected them to. Like the cat moved like a cat, the dog moved like a dog, the birds moved like these great crane-like animals.
Mhm.
So yeah, even though maybe you didn't get like all the individual textures of their fur, all the animals moved in natural ways.
Mhm.
Probably more natural than like the Lion King Mufasa did. Those
Oh.
animals did.
Guaranteed.
Yes. So I think that's what impressed me the most, is that this is a wordless movie that told a story I could follow, and it gave me animals that moved and behaved like they were the animals they would be too. Like the cat behaved like a cat, the dogs
Mhm.
behaved like dogs. Like it wasn't like they kind of fell into their stereotypical roles, but still were able to work as a group.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard movie to talk about because I feel like so much of this movie is just the experience of watching it. Because it
Absolutely.
is sort of like these animals just together experiencing this world. And like sometimes they have no control. Sometimes they're just in the world. Other times they're making decisions.
Mhm.
But yeah, and the world itself is unique. It looks nothing like we exist in. Like it definitely feels like a kind of a bunch of ideas of a world all thrown together.
Mhm.
There was even some like extra spectacular things happening at times,
Sure.
which the movie never quite explains, but you just kind of go with. So
I mean, they don't explain anything. It's just
They don't explain-
It's just a survival movie with animals, as the central characters.
right, yeah, and
Essentially.
you can like pick up little hints about the greater world and
Right.
what everything means, but you're right. There's no dialogue. It's just animal sounds the entire time.
Yeah. Like, why is there no humans when this is clearly a world where humans existed?
I mean,
Like
there
at
you
the
go.
at the beginning of the movie,
Yeah,
the cat like exists in that house for a good deal of time before the water comes without
Right.
its human around. So what happened to the humans? Like, is this a
Right.
post-apocalyptic, like the rapture already happened and all the humans disappeared? Or like,
I mean,
yeah.
I do wonder if this is like a ecological disaster, like humanity's died out for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and the animals are left, right? Because there's all these like great statues of cats. You kind of feel like cats were considered gods amongst these humans.
Mhm.
There's all these great temples and buildings.
Yeah. It'd make a great video game.
It does kind of feel like a PlayStation 2 video game in its animation style.
Sure.
But,
Yeah,
but
the
like
animation,
like an indie one.
the animation's clearly not as good as like, Inside Out 2, which had like
Right.
500 people working on it or something like that. But it has a specific style, which is why I think it was easy to forgive the fact that it wasn't to the same standard as what we expect from like AAA
Yeah.
3D animated kids movies. I'll tell you one thing though. I cared far more for that little cat in Flow without a single word spoken or joke told than I cared at all for Mufasa. I mean, I did not care at all, and that was their one job, was to make me care about Mufasa. And the in Flow, they do it with that cat, and they do it in like the first 20 minutes. You know what I mean? I was invested.
Yes.
In
Right
that
away,
cat.
you're like, oh, I want this cat to live.
Right, exactly. I wanted to know what was going to happen to this cat. So,
Did you know there is a post-credit scene to Flow?
no, I did not know that.
Okay.
What is it?
I don't. Okay,
Can we
this
say
could
right now?
Brief spoiler, if you haven't
Okay.
seen Flow, that's not huge. Skip ahead, I don't know, 30 seconds a minute. Let's say minutes. Okay, So, at the end of the movie, the water's receded
Mm-hmm.
and the animals are together, but now the giant whale is essentially beached.
Yeah.
Right. And the animals kind of surround the whale, and then the movie ends.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
It's
left
kind of a
wondering,
bummer because the whale's going to die.
Exactly.
Right.
There's a post-credit scene of the ocean, and then you see the whale breach.
So somehow it got back to the ocean.
So it's implied somehow the animals rescued the whale. Yes.
How do you know it's the same whale?
You don't. But
Okay.
there's only one of them in the movie.
That's true. But
So, I don't know it's the same whale.
all right. Fair enough. I mean, I like that ending better than the whale dying because that was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, it is kind of a bummer. But, also, before I saw the post-credit scene, I was like, oh, this is about sacrifice.
How life is. Yeah.
And how life is, and how you're right. Like,
yeah, I accepted it. I mean,
accepted it. Yes.
The bird also sacrificed, and there's other sacrifices made in the movie.
I thought the bird ascended.
Well, doesn't the bird get its wing stomped because it's trying to protect the cat?
It gets kicked out of its flock.
That's what I meant by sacrifice.
Oh, that sacrifice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't mean sacrifice to the gods.
Right.
That was a weird moment too when it ascends. That was the first time where I was like, oh, okay, they're not trying to be realistic.
No, they're not trying to be realistic at all. Yeah.
I mean, they are being realistic, but it's not to the letter realistic. You know what I mean? At times they decided to go outside the bounds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like even the whale looks like nothing on our planet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, it was, I'm glad I finally caught it. It was, it's good. I'm a number 2. So
Sure.
maybe not quite the feels that Wild Robot gave me, but it's a good movie. I'm not mad it won the Oscar over Wild Robot.
Sure. Yeah. Me neither. My number 1 most favorite movie out of the last 10 that I saw was Green Border from 2023. This is a drama.
Okay.
It's a hard movie to watch, I would say, because it centers around a Syrian family. They're refugees, and they're trying to escape Syria and move from Belarus through Germany and into Sweden, where they will find relief, essentially.
Jeez. Yeah.
Okay. And evidently, like right there at the Polish border, between Poland and Belarus, it's not necessarily based on a true story, but a true conflict. So these refugees would try to cross the Poland-Belarus border, and both of those governments didn't want to take refugees, but they couldn't say no because that would be breaking like international law or like treaties they'd agreed to and stuff like that. And so neither of them on paper will turn away these refugees. So instead, they just kind of sent their military right to the border, and they would make these refugees go back and forth across the border. They're basically stuck at the border. And by border, I mean, it's just a fence, like in the middle of the woods type of thing. At least as far as what this movie's covering. Supposedly across the entire border, they had this issue, but this movie's kind of like isolating it to this group of refugees. And so you've got these people who just are like desperate. You know what I mean? They are just trying to get somewhere safe, basically. And you've got these soldiers for both sides who have been tasked to just make sure these people don't come into our country. And if they do come into the country that night, you need to literally push them back to where they were. You know what I mean? Like, and these people are unarmed. They haven't eaten for days. They're not that hard to push back over the border. You know what I mean? Like, they're not looking for a fight. And so the soldiers, some of them are good soldiers who don't want to be doing what they've been told to do, and some of them are bad soldiers that don't have much respect for life. You know what I mean? Or for other people. Certainly don't have any sympathy for these refugees who are invading their country and stuff like that. So it's a hard movie to watch just because it's a lot of human suffering, I would say, on top of the attitude of the governments in this movie will very much make you think about the attitude of our government here in this country. And so I don't think the movie was made with that subtext in mind. It's just the moment we're in, basically. Anyway, it's really well acted. There's a third element to it that are like activists that are trying to help people get into Poland and make the move that they need to go, find the people that they need to, but it's illegal to help refugees. And so they help them in every legal way, but like have to stop at a certain point. Because at a certain point you're aiding and abetting somebody who's in the country illegally. So it's an interesting like kind of cat and mouse game as far as like what these activists will be able to get away with by helping them. It's just really well acted, well made, interesting subject, really made me think. Just well executed all around. But it is just a hard movie to watch because it's about people in desperate need not getting what they should get, and governments not doing the right thing because of like nationalism, essentially. Like that's the only way you can explain it, is like they just don't want a bunch of outsiders in their country, and even though they agreed to it, they're going to quietly not do it. You know what I mean?
Isn't the president, again, political, isn't the president of Belarus like essentially a Russian puppet president?
I don't know. I don't know
like,
enough about it.
I believe
be
the
shocked.
president of Belarus is, I mean, he's a Belarusian who's president, but he essentially answers to Putin.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't remember there being much about that in the movie.
Okay.
But because you're focused on the people who, you're not focused on the power players, you're focused
on the politics of it,
on the people on the ground.
Okay.
Definitely worth a poke though if you want a really well acted drama.
All right. I've heard of that movie. I had no idea what it was about though. So
cool.
All right. My number one is a movie that I have never seen, obviously, but I purchased blind as a Blu-ray from a used shop because it's a movie I was always interested in. And it was a sealed brand new Blu-ray that was being sold for like $5.
Nice.
So I was like, why not?
Why not?
And this is 1991's Boys in the Hood, directed by John Singleton.
Sure.
Have you seen this?
I have seen it. I saw it back in the day, and then I rewatched it fairly recently.
Really?
Yeah, because I got the 4K on Criterion.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I was like, man, I gotta watch this.
So it's pretty fresh. Well, let's chat Boys in the Hood then, since it's fresh in your head too.
So by recently, we're talking. I think I was thinking Boys in the Hood was a different movie.
Oh, okay.
But I did rewatch Boys in the Hood November of 2019.
That's not bad. Okay, that's only 6 years. Yeah,
fairly recent, considering
fairly recently.
It came out in 1991, so it's recent compared to when it came out.
It doesn't seem like a movie that you would watch often either.
I'm thinking Menace to Society.
Oh, which I want to see that. I've never seen Menace to Society.
That's the one I got on Criterion 4K.
Okay. Is that good? Is that worth seeing? Obviously, worth seeing if you got on Criterion 4K.
Menace to Society is 95% good and 5% cheesy.
Okay.
Which is weird. And the cheesiness comes right at the end.
Okay, interesting.
So they kind of ruin it a little bit, but the bulk of it's worth it for sure. Anyway, Boys in the Hood.
Well, Boys in the Hood is the only thing cheesy about it is maybe like the 90s saxophone soundtrack.
Sure.
So, but yeah, so this movie it starts off with like it takes place in the early 80s. A young boy, like middle school age boy, he's very smart, but he's getting in trouble in school a lot. So his mom, played by Angela Bassett, sends him to go live with his dad, who lives in South Central LA, played by Lawrence Fishburne. And we meet kind of some of his friends, and we sort of see him as a 10-year-old and sort of the interactions he has of trying to be like a 10-year-old living in a part of America, of LA, that's becoming much more gang ridden and much more decrepit. As much as the people like Lawrence Fishburne who live there just trying to like keep their neighborhood, it's also they're seeing it decay. This movie then jumps into the present day of 1991. And now our main character, they're all high school age students, though they're played by actors in their 20s. It took me a while to calibrate that they're supposed to be like 17-year-olds. They don't look like 17-year-olds whatsoever, but I got around to it. So Cuba Gooding Jr. plays Trey. He's the main character. Ice Cube plays his best friend who lives across the street, who has become essentially involved in the gangs. He's selling drugs. He's doing drive-bys. He's carrying guns. And then Ice Cube's half-brother is trying to get a football scholarship. So each of them is sort of dealing with what is it like to live in South Central LA in the 90s. One of them is just trying to like keep his head down, get a job, go to college, move on. One of them is like, I need a scholarship to get out of here. And one of them is just fully in the worst of it. He's like, this is my life. I'm in the gangs. I'm going to just exist this way. And this movie just kind of follows these three characters as they navigate, a couple months of their life just trying to survive in LA. And it's a very raw movie. It feels like a very real movie. This is John Singleton's debut movie. I believe a lot of this was written based on his own experiences having grown up in that neighborhood. Ice Cube is a great casting choice. Because this is Ice Cube just off of NWA. He's sort of like rising as a solo artist. He's got a lot of that gangster rap cred to him. Cuba Gooding Jr. is really good in it. Angela Bassett's always great, but Lawrence Fishburne, I don't remember him. He is awesome in this movie as the dad. His name is Furious. I think that's a nickname of his. Everyone calls him Furious. And like he is this straight talking, no nonsense dad who loves his son and wants to see him succeed, but at the same time isn't gonna like let him get away with anything. And I just think he's a great character. He has a great speech on gentrification, which I think if anyone like wants to know like what gentrification, they should just watch a Lawrence Fishburne speech on it, or Lawrence Fishburne speech on it, because he just sums up gentrification in like 2 minutes. Of like and explain like the political side of it, and it's great.
Nice. Yeah, I like the movie. I gave it 3.5 stars on Letterboxd, so I clearly enjoyed it in 2019. But I don't remember much about it. I need to rewatch it again.
I think it's worth a rewatch just because you're gonna see like Cuba Gooding Jr. is super young in it, but super great. People I just mentioned. It's got a cool soundtrack too. It has a bunch of hip hop from the early 90s as well as other things, but it's not like the stuff you would remember.
I mean, it was just past the time of gangster rap, right? Because like Ice Cube's in the movie. This is like by the time he was like not releasing albums anymore, or
no. This is when he went solo.
Okay,
so he's
NWA had just broken up.
Or he had broken up with NWA, I think NWA was still around because like Eazy was still alive at this point in 91.
Right, but like the NWA didn't exist after Ice Cube left, right? Didn't they all go their own ways after that?
No, they kept going. They had one more album without him. Yeah, because they had a couple. I can't say the name of the album title.
Sure.
But they spell it backwards because it's got a bunch of words in it.
Gotcha.
So it's that one.
Sure.
That's the one they did without Ice Cube. And there's like there's some diss tracks between the two of them.
Okay. I didn't know that part of the story.
John Singleton wrote this movie for NWA. He wanted all of them to star in it.
And then it was too late.
But yeah, well, no, it wasn't too late. It was too late as in Ice Cube left, and then the rest of them were like, well, we don't want to be with that guy. So
Well, the rest of them aren't actors either. Where I guess Ice Cube wasn't an actor at that point, but he was trying to be an actor at least.
He was trying to be an actor, and I don't think he's acting much in this movie. Like I kind of feel like he's playing
He's just being
himself
Ice Cube.
more or less. Yeah, exactly. Or the life he
Sure.
lived. So
I mean, that's kind of what he does in every movie.
even in Are We There Yet?
I mean, I've never seen that, but I'm assuming that's part of the joke, right? That he's like Ice Cube, and
I don't know. He was making like family comedies in the 2000s.
I know, but it's still just like the thuggish father who has to play Mr. Mom, right? Isn't that the whole joke?
I've never seen them. I have no
I haven't
idea.
either.
Okay.
I haven't either. I'm talking out of the side of my face.
Sure.
For sure.
But
That's always what I assumed they were, though.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought they were family comedies with Ice Cube. Because I mean, he was in like was
Are
he
We
in
There
Stealth?
Yet?
Was that the one he was in Stealth? The fighter jet one?
Was he
Yeah, I think that was him.
with Amanda, whatever her name is, Amanda Beale or Jessica Biel. Jessica
Yeah.
Biel. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Anyway.
I thought that was the guy from
LL Cool J?
Collateral.
Jamie Foxx?
Yeah, wasn't that Jamie Foxx that was in
Oh.
that movie?
Maybe. Okay, what was Ice Cube in then?
I don't know.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to look up Ice Cube now.
All right, what was the name of that movie?
Stealth.
Still, I have that on Blu-ray. I need.
Oh,
to,
Friday. That was his other big one.
yeah,
Oh, and Three Kings. Remember he was in Three Kings?
he was good in Three Kings, but again, Three Kings is like, what if Ice Cube wore a uniform?
Was in the army.
Yeah, it was in the army. You know what I mean? Like it's I don't know. I don't know what I expect from him. You know, other than, I mean, what could he possibly do that wouldn't make you just think, oh, it's Ice Cube? You know
I mean,
what
I don't know. I haven't seen him in 21 Jump Street.
I mean, he's just Ice Cube cracking jokes in 21 Jump Street to me.
Oh, Barbershop. How do we figure out Barbershop?
I didn't forget about it. It's just, what if Ice Cube was a barber?
Okay, fine. Fair enough.
You know what I mean?
Torque. That's the one he was in, not Stealth. He was in Torque.
Oh, I've seen Torque. Torque is
I knew he was in
very
some
bad. That is
I'm
not
sure.
a good movie.
Okay.
Like
I know
Torque
he was
is
in
like
some mid
famously,
2000s.
Torque
Sorry, go
is
ahead.
famously bad.
Okay.
I think what's his name from Parks and Rec is in Torque as well.
Star-Lord?
And no, Adam Scott.
Adam Scott. I'm looking. Dane
Isn't he
Cook's in it.
Torque? Isn't he in Torque? What am I thinking of? He's in another motorcycle movie like that like had no
I know what I
didn't
know
do
what you're
very
talking
well.
about. Yes. Let me see if I can find it here.
yeah.
Adam Scott.
Maybe it wasn't called Torque, but it was one of those.
The Guilt Trip, Parks, High Crimes, No, Torque, right there. Yeah, he was in Torque.
Okay. I had the
Okay,
movie right
he must be pretty deep in the cast list. I cannot find his name on the front page here.
then. Sure.
Oh, Adam Scott, there he is. Yeah, no, he plays McPherson.
It's so weird to think of him in that movie of all movies. For
I mean,
sure.
he probably just was trying to like get some work, right?
I don't know. I used to listen to a podcast called You Talking You2 to Me.
Okay.
Where they would just talk about U2 every week. But it was
Okay.
it was Adam Scott and Scott Aukerman. So like Scott Aukerman being a comedian.
Right.
And Scott Aukerman would just, whenever Adam Scott's professional achievements would come up for any reason, Scott Aukerman would bring up Torque. Even though like it's like the worst movie by Rotten Tomato
Right.
percentage that the guy has on his filmography, basically. It's like the one thing he doesn't want to be known for, basically.
He looks super young in this movie too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was an early role.
Yeah,
I mean,
for
now
sure.
he's like the lead of like the most popular show on TV right now.
With Severance. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Insane.
So like when season 1 of Severance was blowing up and like getting all kinds of critical raves and stuff like that, Scott Aukerman would talk about Torque
Torque.
and just ignore the fact that the guy's in like one of the biggest shows. Same thing with Parks and Rec. Anyway. Cool. We did it, Kyle.
We did it. Yep. Boys in the Hood, my number one, and that's just in case people want to know. It's Boys with a Z, and it's in the Hood with an N.
Although
Boys
I think
in the Hood.
I think if you spell it out on Letterboxd, it'll go.
Can you write like Boys in the Hood?
Yeah, let's try it.
Because it's also duh, I believe. Not the, but duh.
Boys in the Hood, spelled out correctly. First result, Boys with a Z in the THE, not duh.
Oh, it is the, not
Yeah.
duh. Okay. All right, my bad.
The second result is Boys in the Wood.
Is that a adult film?
I don't know. This
Does Letterboxd have adult films on it?
It does, but you have to turn it on.
Okay.
It's off by default. And it's still subject to the movie database. So like not all adult films. It's
Sure.
like adult adjacent films, if that makes sense. Like specifically in the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of movies that people would consider triple X films that actually had plots and weren't all about sex.
Okay.
Or fairly high production, but have been lost to time just because there are extended sex scenes in them. So those are the kinds of movies you can turn on in Letterboxd. But it's not going to have just straight, adult films.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Unless
I must have it turned on based on something that popped up when I searched for Boys in the Hood.
Okay.
It was probably on yours too. Scroll down below. Wait, never mind. We get this later.
I think I have mine turned off, or I haven't turned it on. So
okay.
I'm scrolling
Who knows
down.
why?
I don't see. Oh, wait. From 1961?
For 1961, yes.
Okay.
I think that, yeah.
I don't remember turning it on though, because I don't want weird posters popping up in my letter.
I don't want. Maybe this movie is artsy enough to be considered not just an adult film.
It's only
8 minutes long. Also,
yeah. What is this?
should we watch it
No.
for the after show?
No. There's only 137 people that have marked this watched.
It has one fan.
That's one
Someone.
thing. Somebody put this in their top 4.
David O'Neill.
It has to be a joke, just because of the title. Nobody knows what we're talking about. We gotta go.
We gotta go. Okay, right. This is
Thank you for listening to episode 672 of the Cinereelists Podcast. We appreciate it. Don't forget, find us on YouTube, subscribe there, support us on Patreon, leave us an Apple Podcast review, or send us a listener email. Links to do any of those kinds of things are in the description of this episode. You could also follow us on social media on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or Twitter at Cinereelists, or you can follow my personal Blue Sky or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You can find me on Letterboxd at PeterSKB.
We don't know what we're doing next week, so
We-
no homework yet.
It'll be 1 to 2 movies. There may or may not be a list involved.
Sure, like normal.
Yep.
Yep,
There will be 2 to 3 hosts present.
sure. Definitely. So look forward to that, and we'll see you there, whatever it turns out to be. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.